Yes, as Luke said, I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about our approach to tone of voice for your favourite instant noodle snack. And I know what you're thinking, but it is desperately cool because he says so. And this is a quote from a few years ago. Sure, I love Liam. Sure, I love Liam. But not as much as I love pot noodle, so listen to Noel. I work at Splendid. We're a creative communications agency based in Shoreditch, and we've been working with pot noodle now for about a year, and we've been doing some really great work over the last 12 months to find a way to bring the tone of voice forward to a way that connects with even more of the target audience. So I'm going to take you through a little bit about our approach and then some examples of where it's worked really well. So this is a Twitter event, so you've got to tweet. That's me, and that's our agency, and make sure you use the hashtag #FurtherFaster. So before we talk about tone of voice, I guess, as with everything, you need to define what we mean by tone of voice, and there was a long time ago where it meant the same thing. Everyone knew what it was a brand book, and that was it. But now it's changed, and so the way we approach it at Splendid is by thinking about, is it how you talk? Is it your lexicon? Is it the words you use? Is it what you talk about? Is it who you're talking to, or is it where you're talking? And actually, we feel like with a platform such as Twitter, and in fact with all social platforms, it's all four of them. And that's because it's more than just a dictionary now. If you get that brand book at the beginning of a campaign and you stick with that and you never evolve it, you're never going to connect with the audience in a way that changes and evolves and is malleable. So we think everything you do defines you. So with how, you need to be consistent in your tone and identity. Hodor's probably the best cultural reference for this point. With what, you need to share content that embeds your brand tone, and at Pot Noodle we're all about the easy way. And this is probably the easiest way you can possibly imagine to walk your dog. Who? They're on the banter bus. Who? You need to be a peer, not a professor. What we mean by that is you need to make sure you talk to them on their level. Whether you are a 50-year-old person working on a Twitter account, I don't know why you would be, but if you are, you would still need to talk to them on their language, not as the professor that you probably look like. And lastly, where? Any platform that you try to bring your tone of voice to life on will ultimately change the tone of voice that you then result with. So if you are talking on Twitter, your consumer is going to be using the nuances of that platform in a way to have unique conversations, and you just need to adapt to that. So using hashtags for things that would never actually trend is a perfect example of that, and I'll show you an example of how we've used that later on. So what does that mean for Pot Noodle? All this is well and good, but how does that marry back to the brand that we're talking about? Well, it's because of our target audience. So our target audience is core target audience, we've got loads, 16 to 24-year-old young males, but we have just as many females and males eating our product. And it's because they define their whole culture by their tone of voice. It's how they talk to each other, it's the banter that I mentioned before. If we don't adapt our tone of voice to fit with theirs, then we're going to become irrelevant. This is Jeremy Bentham. Anybody know Jeremy Bentham? So he had the policy of the greatest good for the greatest number, and that is what this generation operates of. They're millennials. They believe in the group before the individual, and that all comes from the conversation and how they talk to each other online. They seek out new experiences like an eagle. They're always looking for new content, new visuals, new experiences, and then they talk about those online. And imagery is built into the very fabric of how they do that. But it's not just imagery. Ultimately, social sharing and conversation completely defines their social groups, makes them in, makes them out. It defines what they do online and offline. But there's loads of brands that are after exactly that same target group that could end up talking about you in exactly the same way. So how do you create differentiation between us as Pot Noodle and JD Sports, for example, who would probably be going after the exact same target audience? Well, we're very, very fortunate working with an amazing brand like Pot Noodle because we take our steer from some really great above-the-line media work. And all of you probably remember some of the historical Pot Noodle ads. And this is the most recent campaign with Brian the Wag and his pug. And what these campaigns allow us to do is keep our tongue firmly in our cheek. It allows us to take a bit of a risk, allows us to explore conversations in quite an unprotected environment as long as we're connecting with our consumers in a real way. Bantosaurus Rex. So how that manifests itself in Twitter is this idea of banter, and whether you love it or you hate it, and looking at the room you probably hate it, it's massively in our consumers' worlds. This is a screen grab I did on my phone and then put it in a blank thing you get from Google of an iPhone 5. And you can see at the top, there's over 500,000 hashtags using banter shared on the platform, and that's just from the last year. So it's massive in our consumers' world, and whether you engage in bantering or not, we need to make it form everything we do in terms of how we talk to our consumer, particularly through a channel such as Twitter, where banter plays such a massive part of how our consumers talk. So who are we? Well, we try to position ourselves as one of the lads. But that doesn't mean we only talk to lads. That means we talk as a lad to mixed groups, and that's another defining characteristic of a modern 16 to 24-year-old friendship group, is that they're massively unisex. There is no lads night out, girls night out anymore. There might be odd nuances, but they go out together. So we need to make sure we're talking in a way that doesn't alienate either gender. We talk in the first person. Great record, that. We talk in the first person, and that's because if we're trying to position ourselves as being one of the lads, doing collective we or third person, it doesn't connect with them as well as it does as I. So we made that change a little while ago, and we saw some amazing results come from that change. It means that we're able to immerse ourselves in their culture in a way that talks to them as if they're the guy playing FIFA next to them, which is a great way for us to be able to not just talk about the stuff that's happening in their life, but talk about it in a way that their peers would. It means we're able to give people props. So if you use any social monitoring tool and you look at Pot Noodle, you see people talking there's a tweet at least every minute talking about how much they love Pot Noodle, which is great. It's got a brand with huge brand love. And so that means we've got a massive opportunity to be really strategic with the conversations we call out and give them props. It also means that we can be a little bit more risky than maybe some other brands can be, and we can call people out as well. We can call people out that are giving props to people that we don't care about. We can call people out who have been dicks. And that gives us a real opportunity to refine our tone of voice in a way that isn't just pushed content, but actual conversation. So now some examples of where that's worked really well for us. Does anyone know who this guy is? Yeah, Adnan Januzaj. He's playing my team tonight, so a bit nervous about that. Does anyone know what he did in Manchester with a Manchester student about 6 weeks ago? Nando's! He earns God knows how much a week, and he took her to Nando's, didn't stop there, made her pay for parking. Lad. And so there was loads of conversation, right? Loads of conversation going, ultimate lad, top drawer lad. We preferred Ladnan. Yay! Nice one, thank you. Yeah, cheers. So this was the tweet that we shared when this story broke, and it took less, because you can probably tell, less than 30 seconds to do. And we shared this, but there's actually a lot of strategy that's gone behind this. I'm going to tell you about it now. So obviously how news agencies break news on Twitter is by prefixing everything in capitals to draw your attention to the fact that it's breaking, regardless of whether it's Joan and her dog or whether it's Syria. They still capitalize it at the front. And so we prefixed it with the capital letters, and we just did a really subtle play on words of details of Adnan Januzaj's second date leaked. There are 2 forks, 1 pot noodle and 1 kettle, date. And so we shared this, and we saw an instant reaction. We made ourselves relevant to the conversation that was already happening, so an instant reaction. So we worked really, really closely with the guys over at Mindshare, and we were able to support this with some media that we had for promoted tweets. The result was absolutely massive. So not only were we being reactive to the news agenda, and it's rooted in our audience's world because it's stuff people are already talking about, but at the heart of this, we could have just shared a photo of Adnan that we put through our production studio and did some Photoshop stuff with, but we didn't. We put the product in the image, and we still got 39% engagement on the tweet. And that's not from a pool of 10,000 people. That's in excess of 100,000 people saw this tweet. We still got 39% engagement. That manifested itself out of more than 1,200 retweets and more than 52,000 clicks. That's 52,000 people that saw that on one day that decided they were going to click on that, and as a result, either had a positive or maybe a negative brand experience as a result. And so far, unless someone smashed it today, that is the highest engagement post so far for Unilever. Thanks. So the next one, Blofeld, nemesis of James Bond. This is our nemesis, Super Noodles. No, don't yay. So this is a post that we shared kind of late last year, not so super now, with 3 pretty bolshy chicken and mushroom pot noodles smashing up a Super Noodles packet. Again, took less than 30 seconds to create. Our interns have a great time, by the way. Less than 30 seconds to create. And again, we saw it connect in a really, really great way, and we supported it with some promoted Twitter budget. And the results, again, are amazing. So this was born out of consumer conversation. We were doing our daily analysis, and we saw loads of people talking about, fuck you, pot noodle, I love super noodles. And we would get back, people going, nah, fuck you, pot noodle's great. So we're like, if the consumers are having this conversation, then we need to be reacting to it, otherwise it's a missed opportunity. A really strong point of view, you can't get much stronger than smashing up the product next to you in the aisle. And the product, again, is massively at the heart of this. And the result of this was just as amazing. We saw 28% engagement on a much bigger pool of people, which turned into 2,635 retweets, which we're still seeing engagement on, and more than nearly 70,000 clicks. And that was the most highly engaged Unilever tweet of all 2013. But we didn't stop there with the Super Noodles bants. This was one that we shared afterwards. So you prefer Super Noodles? Well, come at me, bro. And the reason why this is great is not only did we get 39% engagement and 100,000 clicks on the tweet, that's great, but we've kind of been getting this steadily now, but the conversation that came off the back of this was amazing. So Brian the Dragon tweeted, well, they're not super and there's no pot in a pot noodle, so I'm suing you both under trade descriptions, maybe. So we went back and said, and I'm pretty sure you're not a dragon, so awkward. Fucking point, right? So the great thing about this is that when you look at the engagement on that reply, is better than a lot of engagement you'll see on normal posts that you spend hours creating in a studio. And that was something that our man at the front, but I'm telling you he is because you'll try and hire him, came up with in 30 seconds. And as a result, we got 76 retweets and 146 favorites in an instant. And the conversation that comes off the back of this, it's a little bit small, so you might not be able to see. But the Lad Bible, given that we're after lads and banter, is the Mecca, right? And people shared this and tagged the Lad Bible in it because they felt this was conversation that they would quite happily read on one of the most influential blogs for this target audience out there. Hugely, hugely powerful conversation that took very little. So last point, 21 Jump Street, police officers pretending to be students. That's kind of how we have to approach everything we do. And here's some examples where we've done that again. Bad boy has broken the unwritten rule, never steal your mate's bit of sauce. For pot noodle aficionados out there, you'll know that soy sauce only comes in chicken and mushroom, not Bombay Bad Boy. Pot noodle antics, reply of spooning leads to forking, little sex joke. Bad boy got smashed at the weekend with a smashed bad boy. Fly me to the danger zone. I challenge you to put Tabasco in a Bombay Bad Boy and come out the other side. New Year's Eve, the easiest night of the year to pull. Just remember, fork with care. Pot noodle splashback, that's just a funny photo we found that is actually kind of what it's like when you get boiling water when you're making a pot noodle. So there are 3 examples of how we approach our tone of voice. And I know that you're saying like, oh, engagement's great, scale's great. Actually what this manifests itself as, I'm going to just show you 3 numbers, and these just reference to the 2 Super Noodles tweets, is they were seen by more than 500,000 people, they were engaged with by more than 170,000 people, and each of them, it was just from 2 tweets, both of which collectively took less than 4 minutes to make. And more people now love noodles.